It was a cold and dark night in the middle of December. Walter was on his way home after a particularly long day at work. His house was on the other side of a dense forest that he often took as a shortcut. It was quiet and eerie, and tonight was no different. He had been through this route 100 times, but he usually managed to get there before sundown so that the path was more visible. However, today he did not have any such luck and only managed to enter the forest just as the sun was setting. At night, the forest looked completely different. It was dense and dark, with trees so tall that they seemed to touch the sky. The canopy of leaves overhead was so thick that only a few shafts of moonlight managed to filter through, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. The air was dense with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Walter had been walking for what seemed like hours, hoping to reach home soon, but the forest seemed to stretch on endlessly. As he walked, it seemed to him as if the trees had grown denser, the branches interlocking overhead and casting dark shadows on the forest floor. He came to the realization that he was lost. He tried one trail after another, hoping to reach the exit, but couldn't find it. Exhausted, he sat down. He looked around and noticed a glint coming from the trees in the distance. He felt that they could be coming from someone's house, and so he walked towards it to investigate. His hopes of finding some person who could help were extinguished when he came to the realization that the glint was being caused by the moonlight shining on some kid's art and crafts project. Little totems that they had thought fit to hang by the trees. Still, he tread on the path as it seemed to be the one that was used often. He looked back up at the totems. They were crudely carved from wood or bone and hung from branches with frayed pieces of twine or string. Some were shaped like animals, foxes, rabbits, and birds, while others were more abstract, with twisted limbs and distorted faces. They looked like they had been crafted by someone with little skill or sanity, and Walter couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease as he passed beneath them. Despite his growing sense of dread, Walter pressed on, the totems swaying ominously in the breeze above him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, and every rustle in the underbrush or snapping twig set his heart racing. As he walked, Walter became increasingly aware of the snarl that had been following him for the last few minutes. At first, he thought it was just an animal, but as it grew louder, it took on a more sinister tone. Suddenly, the snarl turned into an otherworldly laugh that echoed through the trees. Walter froze, his heart racing, as he realized he was not alone in the forest. He spun around, trying to catch a glimpse of whatever was stalking him, but he saw nothing. The laughter continued, growing louder and more insistent. As he turned to run, Walter felt something wrap around his ankle, pulling him to the ground. He looked down to see a twisted root snaking around his leg. Panic surged through him as he struggled to free himself, but the root held fast. Suddenly, The ground beneath Walter began to shake and writhe as if something were moving beneath it. The twisted root that had trapped him began to glow with an eerie green light, and Walter felt a surge of dark energy flow through him. With a scream, Walter tore himself free from the root and bolted through the forest, the demonic laughter following him every step of the way. Branches lashed out at him, snatching at his clothes and skin, and he stumbled and fell once more. This time, the roots grabbed at his ankles and held on. He felt a sudden, unrelenting rage enter his mind and body. Walter's body shook as the demon entered him, taking control of his every movement. He felt a surge of power coursing through his veins as the demon made him tear down the totems from the trees. As he tore them down, the demonic presence grew stronger, its grip on Walter's mind tightening. Walter knew that he had to resist the possession, but he felt weak and powerless. Eventually, he managed to summon his willpower to fight back. He grabbed a branch from the ground and used it to break the totems. As he destroyed them, he felt the possession leaving him. The demon let out a deafening roar as he exited Walter's body. Walter followed the sound of the demon's roar, which led him outside the forest, back onto the road that stretched all the way to his home. Walter came to the realization that he hadn't defeated the demon, he had unleashed it out into the world, free to possess and wreak havoc wherever it went. Walter's mind was filled with dread. The demon had brought Walter to the path that led home. But was his home really his home now? Or would he find the demon waiting for him there? Walter took out a bottle of whiskey from his bag and with trembling hands opened it, taking one long swig. Then he looked in the direction of where his house was and started walking.